So, today, welcome for another conversation on races, race, a concept explored in story. And we're talking again about colonialism because that's the theme of this interactive in October 2020. And the person I'm talking with today is one of my favorite coaches, August Crenshaw. And she'll be doing a lot of talking because August is a dynamic speaker. And since this is a conversation, I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself. And then we're going to look at this definition I found online for colonialism, and we're going to take it from there. But
Ooh.
please meet Miss Augusta, August Crenshaw.
Hey, everybody. So I'm actually going to deviate from my typical intro and my quote unquote fact about me because of the nature of this conversation. I am a St. Louis native born and raised. However, as a young child, I did have the opportunity to live in Springfield, Missouri, and Garden City, Kansas, where I had the opportunity to be the only, or perhaps one of two, Black children in elementary school. I then moved back to St. Louis. I was an inner city student. I was also a student in the DSEG program. And even with all of that, I'm a lover of knowledge and wisdom and education and intellect. And I'm a teacher at heart. And I think that's how I got into the coaching industry, a lover of purple, a lover of color, and I'm excited to be here. And I just want to say thank you for having me, Ms. Skywalker.
Oh, thank you for having the time because you got a busy schedule, but this is important. And I have this definition about colonialism, which I actually chose to use from the internet because when I looked at my trusty Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, which is many, many decades old, its definition was totally inadequate. So this one says colonialism is the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers and exploiting it economically. Now, just to get started, what do you think about that definition?
I think it's spot on. And it's funny, because I did the same thing. I love to look up definitions and see. And just even add to that really briefly, I remember as a young girl looking at definitions in one of those older dictionaries that my grandparents had, because I came from that era where buying encyclopedias was what you did. And they had all different kinds of them. And so I think it's important for us to care about that definition because the definitions of words evolve. And so sometimes when we're having these sensitive conversations, we think we're talking about the same thing, but we're not. And so being well versed in what a word means then and now, and potentially what it will mean going into the future, as well as what the connotation behind it is important. But when I think about colonialism, colonized places, yeah, the short version of it is I think about a bunch of invaders who came in, took over, set up a system, a structure, a government, and then exploited the people for their land, their labor, and whatever else it is. And then, bam, they have a thriving economy and world while the rest of us are figuring out how to navigate through all of that stuff.
Now, a lot of people will say that the era of colonialism is over, that we've gone past that. But first of all, that's not true, obviously, because there's several countries. I mean, what's just happened with Hong Kong is a questionable thing, but that's tied up to, again, histories because Britain, it had been under Britain as a colony. But what I'm really interested in looking at and talking about is how colonialism is much more than just, I mean, the political control, but they took over not only politics, but culture, religions, social ways of being, and how we as African Americans, they didn't, they took us out of our country. So, unlike people who are still in Africa, or like unlike Native Americans in the United States who still have some of their land, maybe reduced, but they can actually steal, and it's a constant battle to keep what they can. It can actually go to sacred spaces. We don't have that, which I think deepens the disconnect we African Americans as a group experience in terms of being able to come together cohesively,
Mm-hmm.
because we've been divided up so well by being thinking we're Americans, because we've been here since the beginning. We've been here since the very beginning. That's why, not that America started in 1619, but the first Black Africans were brought here as slaves or indentured servants, I'm not sure. But we've been here from the beginning, but we have no claim. And some people, and I've even seen articles, I haven't been to Africa, but I know people who have lived in Africa. I knew many Africans when I was on the East Coast. And I read an article, and some people who try to go back to Africa, African Americans, find it's not quite what they thought it would be for them. Even though I read one article, I can't remember the lady who wrote it, and she enjoyed her travels. But at the end, she came back saying, I'm more American. I want to stay here. So I'd like to just get your um, comments or insight on how you see how colonialism manifests today among Black people, and specifically Black women.
Absolutely. And I'll say first that I agree with you wholeheartedly. There is no end. And in their plan, there was no end in sight. You don't go and do something that heinous only for it to last for a short period of time and stop. You're creating a systematic structure. That's your legacy. And so, as awful as that legacy may be, when they stepped in and they did those things, there was never any intention for it to go anywhere. But also expanding that definition in order to be able to have that level of a stronghold, you also have to suppress and divide the people. That's just the natural mechanism. So it really isn't just political, it isn't just economical, it is cultural and spiritual. And we were given all of their things. And if they allowed us to keep, because a lot of people, let's go ahead and broaden this. Some people will say, well, Jesus was in Africa, different names, and for people that are hardcore Christians. But at the end of the day, without debating that or the manifestation of what the Messiah and the Virgin look like, at the end of the day, they put their twist on it. They put their spin on it, and they even exploited verses in the Bible and specifically wrote it to put God in the midst of a slavery and making us be submissive. So to just say that it came and it went is egregious in itself. Now, my thing is this: why did Obama, when he was in administration, have to sign into legislation for victims of the Holocaust to receive some form of reparations? Because they had been violated. But you want to know that we don't have to ask the question, what's the one race of people that have never received any form of reparations whatsoever? And that is us. When we go around here, we have to get permission to have a building, or maybe we have a house. Let's go to the house that Martin lived in. Let's go to the house that Madam C.J. Walker purchased and look at how she lived next door to, well, who was it? Napoleon Hill. But when we go around the great United States, their statues, their streets, we got to vote for our name to even just be on a street. What do we own? What can we claim? Nothing here is ours other than our being. And we wouldn't have redlining and all of those other things to even block us from gaining material wealth and physical possessions if that was totally deconstructed. And so that in itself is, like we said, it's a lie. It's not gone, it's still here. And so we need to be together, we need to work together, but we can't, like you said, because we are divided. And matter of fact, I did a live video earlier today how about how we use the phrase, we teach people how to treat us, we teach people how to love us. But when we say that statement, it's said on an individual basis. But if I have finally gotten to that place where, as a Black woman, African American, however you want to say it, where I have pride in my being, but then I see that you are mistreated and not reverenced as the queen that you are too, then I got to stand up for you as well. And see that statement, it's we teach people how to treat us. And if it's individual and not collective, we've already lost the majority of the battle. And so whether you want to be in Africa or not, you do eventually at some season in your life, in my personal opinion, you get taste. It might be just a little taste of what the journey of spirituality looks like. And it's not saying that you necessarily have to go live in the motherland, but if a real Reiki healer has ever used Reiki healing on you, if you've ever experienced transcending while you're meditating, if you've ever experienced the phenomenon that you can't explain, then that's you all of a sudden being spiritually opened up to your roots. And so everybody doesn't necessarily have to go back to Africa, because you know what? Before they were trading us, we were here too. So it's not it's so it wasn't just the indigenous people, but we were harmoniously moving around the entire earth. And so we don't have to necessarily all go back to Africa, but we do need to get back to a place where we're embracing and not demonizing the gifts that God has given us. Because at the end of the day, and I love my white people, but if you happen to watch this video, a lot of the practices that you all are implementing that you believe are so sacred, you don't even realize it. Generation back generation, they doing the same thing they did with cornrows. They took it, added a twist, act like it's some new profound thing that they discovered, when in all actuality it was something that was in existence since the beginning. But that's what they do, they rape our culture. Kim Kardashian is a founder of cornrows. Yeah, right. And so whether it's with music and hip hop, spirituality, whatever, that's something that we've been dealing with. And if we can't have those conversations and acknowledge that, then we can't heal and grow individually and collectively as races, not just also within our race. If we want to start healing, the stuff that we're going through, especially here in the United States, but
Yeah,
it's happening all over the world.
yeah. And I like the way you touched on a lot of things, because it's not just, like you said, it doesn't just happen with us as Black people and Black women. And that's why, for me, I started working with women of color. When I said women of color, I embrace all women. And basically, I say all women of color are Black women. Now, some of them will say no, but then I will say, hey, I can show you articles I found a year ago online of women of color in every quote unquote ethnicity or cultural group, including a blog by a Latina who said, I'm a white Latina and I identify as a woman of color. Because any difference, and sadly to say, you could even be white people too, if you're gay, if you're differently able, any difference from this uh, ideal of what's supposed to be correct and proper is tried to be put down. The problem is a lack of appreciation for the variety that exists of humanity. Instead of saying, I'm better than you because of whatever reason, because of my skin color, because of my race, because I went to school, because I can run faster than you. But when we're talking specifically about colonialism, we it ties directly with racism. It's like, to me, they're like the same synonyms, because the way Kendi from Stamp defines racism is very simple. He says any kind of racist ideas is any idea that a person is superior or inferior based on their race. And from racist ideas come racist systems, racist practices, slavery. But what I learned from that book, and I had read other Black history books before, but what I liked about this book is he dealt with racist ideas. And then they're so tied in with colonialism and colonialist ideas because, so it's still, we see it still being perpetuated even among us, particularly as African Americans. And some of this has been bridged, but for a long time, there was always the split between the educated or the more professional Black people, or the, when we used to be segregated, the doctors and teachers in the community compared to the people who were going to jail, and the thieves or the drugs or the fewer people who were struggling. But there was, it wasn't such a big split in the actual day to day of people's lives, because people were neighbors and friends and they knew each other and they helped each other. On the intellectual and idea level and systemic level, there were all kinds of splits. But what I'm seeing more, and I think is important, we can talk, and I'd like you to address, is the movement for Black people across the board with the whole intersectionality and more emphasis on Black business, and even more emphasis and recognition of commonalities we have with other people of color and other people who are put in different categories. I see this as a good movement and good thing, but I'd like to just get your responses to that, to these things.
You know what? And I kind of got a love hate with the whole extra emphasis on us. And I want to I'm don't want to make the conversation seem too clouded, but I want to go back to something else that you said before I even address that, because there's so much woven. I'm trying to like get every little point that you said and kind of weave all of this together. When it comes to this whole ideal of colonialism, I first want us to recognize the fact that the hierarchy is rich land owning white men. That right there alone automatically ought to change the entire game up. And it's crazy because when you look at history, the level of division between blacks and whites really wasn't that strong. It was when they noticed anytime a ruling power can see a lesser or poorer class getting together, then they know that just by the sheer fact of numbers alone, they will lose. They have to divide them. Like, there's really no reason that Washington, like, literally, we could all just go and like burn that mother, you know what, down. Like, literally, we could take them all. We could take all of the political figures and just kill them. I'm not saying do that, but and bam, because we outwit them and we outbeat them with numbers. And so even when you look at old biblical stories, what did they want to do with Moses? They wanted to kill the young black males because of the fear that more black men means more infrastructure, power, and they could do an uprising. And so it's amazing how we have this divide, you know, from the black woman to the white woman. But you know what? You'll lie and say that a black man raped you, but you don't even realize that that white man don't give 2 cents about you. See, he's putting my brother in jail to keep me and my man divided. But when he's what's his name, Jeffrey Weinstein, he's Weinstein, but you can't tell on him. You got to wait till he doggone near dead in the dirt. And so you are being trespassed upon and violated. But because of your fear that you won't even embrace and the trauma that you have to deal with, you will displace your pain on my brothers and not on the issue with the ruling class. And they know exactly what it is that they're doing. Now, as far as we are concerned, and I'm with you. I remember when I first started working with Kamit, as a friend of mine who teaches Black's language, and she just really began to flood the whole internet with all of these Afro Colombians and stuff like that, where even there they got the light skin, they got the dark skin. And if I can pass and get through this system a little bit better by holding on to what I want to say is white, even though scientifically the DNA data says I'm Black, I'm going to still say that I'm white. And so, yeah, it would be a completely different thing if we could acknowledge and own the essence, all of us, of who we are. But the likelihood of that is slim, next to none. And so, on one hand, I'm very much pro, yeah, I'm doing this for Black women. Yes, I'm doing this for my culture. Yes, shop with more Black owned business. Yes, circulate the dollars in our neighborhood. But at the same time, I always have that little bit of wisdom and that little bit of God. And when I say little bit, not to be disrespectful, but that thing that creeps into my spirit and my psyche that knows that at the heart of August, I really do love all people. And we can't categorize all people because, see, I'm looking at you, and from a distance, you look like Becky, but you really might be more like Keisha. You know what I'm saying? And so being connected, I don't want the line there. And I want to be able to love on everybody. And so, on one hand, emphasizing my Black, which I should have no issues because of all that we've been through. But at the same time, it is alienating these other ones over here for whatever reason. And so, I know that I'm taking a giant leap and I'm twisting this conversation a little bit. But at the end of the day, we're all experiencing pain. And I don't care if you Black, white, Hispanic, slash whatever, poverty is poverty. Rape is rape. I know we got an extra set of issues to block my melanated brothers and sisters down, but I don't want us to be so pro-Black so we can get it, so we can do it, that we are making other people feel like their pain and their story doesn't matter, because technically we're hypocritical. I'm telling you, you better hear my story and my pain, and at the cost of yours not mattering. And that right there is where I believe that a lot of insight and wisdom comes into play, and where our commonalities could be the things that make us cohesive across the races, period. But of course, a lot of this work has to be done with us, which is why the majority of the work that I do, I call in my African American queens and then gradually branch out to other people, because I basically want us to clean up in house first. So yeah, the Black experience is different. It's often much more heinous, and when I say that, because I don't like comparing trauma or struggle, but I always use this analogy. If a 5-year old is molested by a 35-year-old man versus a woman is raped by a 35-year-old man, you would not counsel, you would not work to heal both of them in the same manner, because of the way that it affects the child versus the way that it affects a grown woman. But I don't want to measure, don't make me choose. And so I would compare the atrocities that Black people have suffered to the 5-year-old versus my white women or Hispanic women to the adult that was raped. So I don't want to get rid of the conversation as a whole, and I want to express the sensitivities to how ours is different, but not in the hypocrisy of that your shit don't matter. Sorry about that, but but so that's, I don't know how that answered your question, but that's the floodgates of the kind of thoughts that goes on in the mind of August Crenshaw when I'm working to have harmonious balance, but yet also be a warrior for change for my people.
I That was great, because that's why I named this race a concept explored in story. And I have, and primarily and that's through Story Circle. And that's designed to do just what you were talking about, because the Story Circle, because I live in an area that's 99.9% white. So the only thing I could do is talk to people and story circles, storytelling, when you get people together and share stories, it's a whole different thing from me teaching them, because I am not going to be talking to white people. I don't care about guilt. I'm married to a white man who was raised as a Catholic, and I was a Catholic too, but he will talk about his Catholic guilt. I don't care about your guilt. I'm saying, forget, get over it. Let's deal with healing. And I knew that as a storyteller, because I've done stories circles before, and I've seen how people can open up, share things, get to know each other better. And it's a beginning. It's not the whole enchilada, but it's a beginning. And because I feel like the conversation needs to continue, that's why I said, well, I'll do these interactives and start having more conversations. Because there are people who are, a surprising number of people who are doing all kinds of anti-racist work. I, I went on LinkedIn and it was over 3,000 people, which was interesting. And so it's good because at least if people recognize the concept of ideas, and this
Mm,
morning came to me, what are ideas? Ideas are just a story,
mm.
and stories can change. And that's what I've been saying for years and trying different ways to get people to deal with recognizing the healing ability of storytelling.
Yeah.
But it seemed like this is the work I'm supposed to do, because when they say the work that people come to you about and want to pay you for, this is what, because I like to just share information in a creative way. And I love storytelling.
Yeah.
And the responses I got from the first circles I did was very good, and said, well, okay, this is going to continue. But while I build that up, because that's going to take a lot of, some work and research like anything, I wanted to get something started in which people can subscribe to and start to get involved and interact in the conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you were one of my first people to get involved in this conversation. And it's true that the whole part of the reason why I'm doing this too is recognizing that there was a lot of this kind of, not exactly attacking white people, but that whole, you're responsible, your ancestors are responsible in this whole, and I've been dealing with white privilege. That whole concept I've been dealing with that for as long as I've been dealing with the misuse of the word minority. And that's like 40 years practically. Because Tim Weiss was writing about this stuff at the same time I was in Austin writing my articles.
Yeah.
So it's just, what's nice is it's caught people's attention. But what I feel is now, and the reason I want to do my work, is that we have to keep the conversation going with everyone.
Absolutely.
Everyone, no matter what your skin color, no matter what your ability, no matter what your sexual preference, because at the bottom, it's all the same, a lack of compassion and a lack of
Mm.
recognizing that we're all human beings.
Yeah.
And the fact, like you said, that there's some people who are just greedy and they don't care about anybody except what they want.
Yeah,
And
can I say something really quick? You
sure.
made me think about something. I remember there's a gentleman that I'm connected with, and Lord, I forget where he's at. He might be in the Netherlands or somewhere. And he was like, when everything happened with George Floyd, he wanted to have a conversation. He actually came into my community, and several of us got on a live video. We streamed it on YouTube, we streamed it on Facebook, and it was actually saddening to see him by the end of the video break down, because as a white male in another country, he's aware, but not, he doesn't really know. And he was like, oh my God, I'm just so sorry. And he's in tears. And I told him, I said, sweetie, don't apologize. And I know other people that might have threw him off for a second. And, and I gave him this analogy. I said, I said, the son can't apologize for the sins of the father. And I said, what you may have to do is apologize if you if unfortunately if you caught some of the characteristics of the father. And so, like, if a man is abusive, you imagine a man always beating on, harping on his woman, and treating her really bad, and the son sees it. When the son grows up, He can't apologize for what the dad did to the mother. That's the father's responsibility. But even when he grows up and he begins to have relationships with women, he actually may not become an abuser. He will be everything but that, because he doesn't want to be anything like his father. But unfortunately, by being raised in an environment, he was not taught the skills to love, to communicate, to be emotionally stable. And so the residue of the father may be on him in some form of dysfunction. And so what I was basically saying to him is, what has become of you because of this system? Acknowledge the behaviors that you're responsible for, and that's all that you can apologize for, only once you truly recognize it and truly are sorrowfully sorry and are willing to do the work to reverse something that you're habituated to. And so that's another conversation that I don't believe a lot of people are ready to have. But I don't have time to tell you that you just need to be a poor bum on the street because your great, 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 great granddaddy had about 17 plantations. And I found out that my great, 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 great grandma was one of his, pieces of toy to play with, because you didn't have anything to do with that. And so if you really think about it, that's the blame game, and that's victim mentality. And so I have found that when I talk to people that are spiritually elite, the healers, and all of these, whatever these titles are, when I call them back out on stuff like this, then I get the pushback. And it's like, listen, if we're going to say you can't have victim mentality, then you don't get to change that just because I'm a Black woman. If I start saying we can't play the blame game, you don't get to change that just because my ancestors were slaves. The only thing August Crenshaw has right now, beyond the shadow of a doubt, is the power and the ability to make sure I live a life that is whole, full, and complete. And that I play my part, understanding that completion is not just for me, but it's for my family and every individual that I come into contact with, to truly be a world changer and to make a difference in this world. But I don't have time to be beating up white folks, telling them to apologize. Don't be coming up to me talking about you an ally and you gonna sit down with granddaddy and let them keep on telling nigger jokes, at the table or whatever. If you're gonna start touting all that stuff and saying you down for the cause and you're gonna help, then be genuine and require your granddaddy to be loving, compassionate, or respectful with his tone of voice, or don't tolerate what he's saying, and yada yada yada. But you can't apologize for your granddaddy for me. The son cannot apologize for the sins of the father. He can't.
Thank you. That's what I felt too. I just, I said, I can't have like most people know by now, most of my nieces and nephews on one side of my family are part white, from half to a quarter, because for some reason that happened with my sisters. And all of my sisters are browner than you. So it wasn't, I'm the
Mhm.
one who was, but I have a different father and no kids. So that side. But this is what you said is true. And what I look at this is that as Buddhist, and I actually believe in reincarnation. And believing in reincarnation puts another layer on how you think about things, because in actuality, I could have been, although I don't think so, I don't really feel like it consciously, but in actuality, I could have been a white woman or a white slave owner. I could have been anything in past lives, any millions of things that I don't even can't even imagine,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much that is possible. But
Yeah.
in this life, in this form, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's not done from a point of trying to put anybody down, because it, everything I do comes from compassion. And basically, in this country, in the United States, almost any problem people really are having, if they really get into the history and some of the ideas behind things, from health, psychology to the economy, there's some racist ideas.
Hmm.
And what is done to Black people has been done, and I've seen this historically, even recently, from what had happened with Clarence Thomas and uh, the woman who opposed him, and then happened to Clinton. And so what's happening in this country now has happened to Black people, and they're playing the same old tired games, which I fervently believe that there is not a majority of people who are falling prey to the same old game. There are people who still have racist ideas. They're the people who, like you said, have been raised in those homes where racist ideas were expressed, and they are buying into it and going for it wholeheartedly for whatever reasons. And those are the people I don't know. You know, time, circumstances can change anyone's life. But
Hmm.
there are people who really want to recognize that we have racist ideas. Because when I read Stamped, and what I liked about this book is that he revealed that W.E.B. Du Bois and Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth, three Black heroes, intellectual, courageous, expressed racist ideas. Not all the time, but they did, which means I know I've done it. I know that almost all of us have done it, and it's having that recognition of even our own selves of what we're doing, and it's like a little bit of chip, chip, chip thing, but it's also it opens up because there's a thing about how one person can learn something and then it just spreads kind of magically throughout society. But we've been living in racist ideas for so long. What we're starting now is just should be just become standard. Otherwise, we'll keep going through the same things. We'll keep having our Black men getting killed, Black girls getting treated terribly in schools because they're so beautiful and bright. And and that's the thing that I'm glad is coming to the forefront, because young Black girls have so much going on and they are being crushed in some of these schools. And it's something we really have to stop, because and it's happened before. It's happened to a lot of the women who still struggle. So there's so much we have to do, but people have to understand we're coming to say that I want to be an anti-racist. I call myself now an anti-racist associate, which is a friend, a partner. So, but it's about ideas, which are stories, and that's what I'm about. We heal our stories, we heal ourselves, and like you said, it's not something that happens overnight. But I think it's important for groups of people who are in any organization or business who are willing to come together to talk about their racial stories. They'll learn something. And what I learn when I do these circles is I start seeing how some people will only go so far, and they really are afraid, you know. And then you start thinking about, okay, but then it just keeps going and going, and there are more and more stories. But the colonialism we're facing now and the racism has become so entrenched on a material level that it's really important. And our ultimate victory, and I've always said this, the ultimate victory for anything is spiritual. But the change of people's minds and mindsets is how we fight colonialism now. Because as people's minds change and their mindsets, they start looking at things differently in whatever profession they're in. If they're in high tech, if they're teachers, if they're in finance, because everything, everything we do in the United States is built on a system that is not built on caring about human beings. It's
Yeah.
built on competition, ego, getting more than you can than other people, and using your and making money off of things that don't exist. so, so, so to me, all of this, our reality is a colonialistic reality in the
Yeah.
United States and in a lot of countries still. And I know that I kind of tend towards a little bit the extreme, and I know I say, okay, we're going to do this step by step. The only thing is that I've seen in my lifetime, 30 years ago, I was writing stories, fictional stories about people who were mixed, all kinds of mixtures. And there were always future fiction stories, but there would be people who would be married to Asians and Blacks and Africans and Asians and Native Americans. And I had people telling me, saying, oh, that doesn't exist. That won't ever happen. And now, what do you see? And it's a lot of things that people have thought, oh, this can't be. But if you put the idea out, it can be. It exists. Our ideas, our thoughts, our stories, and they exist. And that's how we change. That's the only way we can get to the point of overcoming this vast material power that can seem overwhelming until we remember, like you said, we have the spiritual, cultural tenacity that has kept people of color and Black people still here despite every effort to destroy us.
Yeah, I can't speak to the book because I haven't read it, but I definitely always keep an open mind. And I told you before that I'm going to get that. I got a couple of things I'm reading right now, but I am going to say something that the author probably would say, August, that's a racist view. But I also want to put this out there first. I do have a little bit of an issue when Black people call other Black people racist. I don't have a problem if you say we're discriminatory. You know what I'm saying? We're judgmental. You know what I'm saying? Or that we're racially biased. But because racism requires the ability to construct something where you can suppress and oppress other people, and we don't have that, that's why I have the issue with it because it technically goes against the definition. But here's something that I don't know, but I have to be honest. The only way I can have real relationships with people is if I say things the way that I really feel. And this is the thing that I would say to the girlfriend sitting on the couch having a conversation. While it cannot be 100% proven, when you look at our race and what we naturally do, there is more of an innate sense in us that we are way more forgiving, that we are usually more spiritual, and we don't necessarily do the things that our counterparts have done. Like, we can't fathom those things. If we look at the history books, things like cannibalism and stuff like that, there are some unfortunate, grotesque things that are in the history of white people. And so when you hear some Black people say that our melanin is scientifically proven to show that we have a higher ability to heal faster or to connect more readily. When people start talking about the pituitary gland and opening up chakras, are those racist ideas, or is that the fact that there is certain genius or spiritual abilities that the darker the flesh, the deeper the juice, the sweeter the juice? So for me, is my acknowledgement of the fact that there are certain things that I can do potentially better than, for instance, a white person. Am I being racist, or am I acknowledging scientific data? And I would use the comparison of men to women. Are there women who can lift more weights than certain men and they compete as bodybuilders? Absolutely. But the natural physique of a man is harder and stronger, where a woman is typically strong but softer. And so for me, when I look at certain things, if I'm comparing the two, there are certain things I'm going to say that are more typical with certain cultures more typical in certain races. And I believe the thing that divides me from the man sitting on Capitol Hill or the cartel that's running the Fed versus me saying what I'm saying is I'm acknowledging difference versus saying this is the difference that I got and that's why it means that I'm better than you. Because I could look at myself and see I have a more highly inclined spiritual ability than maybe someone who is my white counterpart, but I'm not looking at them and saying that I'm better than you. I'm just saying that I have a gift and it's more innate in me than it is with you, just like with intellect and music and artistry and whatever else it is. But I'm not going to use my gifts to put you down. I'm still going to cut because that's what we've always done. We've always still accepted them into our culture. And unfortunately, they've only taken what we've given, their ancestors, and not even just their ancestors, even now, like I said, with the example with cornrows, they take everything we have, our music, and then they have to pervert it and make it their own. So even when it's not their superior thing, they make it a superior thing. So yeah, there are some stuff, there's some things, and hey, we can't be friends if I'm not honest with you, where I have to say, yeah, that soul and that sound, when you hear it, you didn't hear that soul and that sound until white women started needing to be a Christina Aguilera needed to sound more like, any of my soulful sisters. So there's just different things that we bring to the table. But I feel that when most Black people recognize those differences, we're not doing it so we can put other people down. We're doing it so that we can lift ourselves up, whether they're making false claims and stealing stuff and putting us down. So I have to read his book to truly understand him. But I don't believe now, but I'll accept conviction if it's there, if when he explains it. But I don't believe that my views are racist. I just believe that based on the limited information that I have, and I say limited because I haven't consumed enough, that it's just data that supports my beliefs about some of our abilities.
Well, you see, the thing is, there's so many ideas and racist ideas. He's very specific there, and
Okay.
he doesn't call Black people in general, Black people, he doesn't say they can be racist. And that's the thing for people to understand when you talk about language. An idea, and I say expressed it. He didn't call them racist because, and in fact, he shows how W.E.B. Du Bois changes his ideas in his long life and ends up living in Africa when and dying in Africa at 92. But in his 20s and teens, he thought Africans, because he didn't know any better, were primitive. So, and that was a racist idea, that Africans were primitive. So those are it's ideas. It's not saying Black people at all. In fact, and he is constantly bringing up the um and honoring all Black people in a way that a lot of scholars and he points out how a lot of people who had written books, who were supposedly scholars, were still putting down Black people who were not
Gotcha.
educated, or even Black folklore. What they did to, the fact that Zora Neale Hurston, who was an anthropologist, she was a light-skinned Black woman, but she was an anthropologist. She worked her way, got through school, but she was a writer too, and she loved Black folklore. And her novel, "The Eyes Are Watching God," is one of the best novels. I've read it twice, but it's written about a small town and Black people. She uses vernacular, and she was put down by Black people, and particularly Black writers. And so what I
I
say,
got you now. I
yeah,
see where
so
I see where I see where this is going. Yeah.
right, it's about ideas and recognizing and knowing the difference between ideas and between the systems or actions those ideas result in or support. And saying that's what, and so what I'm trying to do, even with the storytelling, when people tell their stories, they're going to share some ideas. And even before and before I'll ever do a circle, I do a questionnaire that people have to fill out.
Mm-hmm.
So I get an idea of where people are and what I need to address to guide them into at least opening up to some degree. And basically, the first two circles, I know one of the circles, I left some women very uncomfortable. They weren't ready to face things. They weren't even ready. One lady had never been around Black people most of her life, even though her husband had been active in the civil rights movement. And she
Hmm.
didn't have any Black friends. And one of the other ladies said, well, here's Skywalker. And she had an opportunity and she didn't take it. And it wasn't the first time I had met this woman because I had been to her church on several occasions and she's friendly, and you find that's interesting. And it's like, I was glad she didn't invite me over, but if she had, it would have shown she was at least willing to do
Right.
this. That's what I'm saying. It's that willingness. And
Yeah.
to me, the ultimate way we end the racist ideas and then the racist practices and then the racist systems is when people are willing to sit down and get to know each other story by story,
Oh yeah, I
you know?
appreciate how just right now where I was going and what I was thinking, which is a conversation that comes up a lot with Black people, it was something completely different. But if I had just watched you on a live video, heard you say that, oh, what's she talking about? And I'm not, you know what I'm saying? We're having dialogues by ourselves. We're looking at people's posts, we're looking at their videos, we're reading their articles. And like I said at the very beginning, we think we're having the same conversation, but when we look at the definition and even the connotation behind what's being said, we're not even saying the same thing. So now you've intrigued me even more about reading the book because I'm like, oh, so that's what he meant about racist ideas and Black people. So we think we know, but we don't. And so I'm grateful that we're having this conversation because I've also learned a lot more about you as well as gotten, some reference material to refer back to. Yeah, I applaud you. This is
And
good
I,
work.
and I want to follow up on what you said because my husband and I had a discussion about this a while back. And because this thing of people being police about everything somebody says and then firing people and ruining their lives is absurd.
Cancel
Because,
culture.
because he said, and this had happened before they started using that word, there was some, and he was a white uh, sportscaster who lost his job because he was saying just what you said, but the way he said it wasn't. They didn't quite like it, but he was saying these black men are stronger and better at doing this, but the way he said it and it didn't, they didn't like it. But it is true that some things, and I think also that is a subtext of some of the things, that happens with, and only way I can say this, and this is our conversation, that I feel like sometimes it's a subtext with a lot of white women because they're so into trying to look like they don't look. And then they don't, and they say they want to be your friend, but you're like, really? Do you really? Are you really? It's a lack of loving themselves,
Yeah.
you know? And so, and like you said, the whole thing, I go all the way back to who was the first one? I forget the girl, even before the Kardashians, Bo Derek.
Oh yeah.
I was riding at a Greyhound bus stop and I had cornrows, which I had been wearing for years before Bo Derek, and I was really pretty pissed about it. And this white boy walks up to me and says something about Bo Derek and cornrows. And it's like, really? It's it, and that's why the whole thing about it's just about education, information, sharing stories, and then slowly working into making our own way for the economic and the power. But and that it's going to be a constantly evolving thing.
Yeah.
But really, it's just like what a lot of people don't like to admit is that, yeah, this country's going to end up looking more like Egypt or the Middle East in time because people are marrying and intermarrying, and it's been going on for a long time. It's been going
Mhm.
on for a very long time. And of course, there will always be people who will just stay with their own people, and that is good too. But I think that as we get to know each other as people, as we share our stories and have these other people who have the expertise to deal with systems and stuff, and all the laws they write and then they change the laws, and and things that are going on in this country. It's really important we're having these discussions because whatever happens, there's going to be people doing a lot of expressing themselves and standing on the front lines
Hmm.
because of what is happening in this country, and it's happened on what they
Yeah.
say is legal.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I know you have things to do and places to go, and I want to thank you
Oh,
for our
thank you.
first conversation.
Yes, I was gonna say we got to continue this.
And for you who have watched all the way to the end, thank you for participating in this second conversation about colonialism at the first Ray Says Interactive in October 2020. Conquer colonialism, valiantly vote. Until next time, take care. And remember to breathe deeply, smile, and be grateful. Nope, I don't want to end the meeting.